Okay, so I'll say that again. We do have a quorum, so we can move forward. Let's see, minutes. Susan, did you get a chance to review them?
I
Sure.
did, thank you.
And Tom, you
Yes.
did, so,
And I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
and we have a second,
Second,
okay. Since we're on Zoom, we each have to vote, so I vote aye.
Aye.
Obviously, Tom and Susan are aye, so we may move forward. So I put the MCOG housing group back on. It turns out that the individual at MCOG was responsible for it, happened to go on vacation and get COVID and had a fairly nasty run of it. So when she was not home, so she was kind of out of touch, and which is why they didn't have the follow-up meeting. I went with Missa to a MCOG meeting in Rockland not long after our last meeting, which was her first day actually back, and so we chatted. They did have a meeting in the middle of July, very sparsely attended. We got another one coming up next week. Hopefully it has a greater attendance than the last one. Coming out of that, I think the concern I had with the group is they were very much focused. That's okay.
Sorry,
Welcome.
so sorry I'm late.
That's okay. They were very much focused on the low income affordable housing. Which I think, might benefit IAP. So I'll talk to them as if they want to join that group. I articulated, kind of what we were about, and they all agree that that's an issue, but I think their focus again was looking, at least in that small group that attended that meeting, was really on affordable housing akin to what IAP does. So, they only had about 7, maybe 8 people on that meeting, so it was not as well attended as the earlier one. Hopefully, we'll have a larger turnout next week and we'll get more into what they plan to do, so that's about all I can tell you about where they are at this point. But anyway, for the affordable piece of it, I hope they can come up with something, and I hope I can get some support looking at workforce. Unfortunately, a lot of the people who were there will use the term workforce housing instead of affordable housing. And so I had to tell them, when I talk about workforce housing, that's a group that's slightly different. Still needs to be affordable, but not at the same level as the typical affordable housing criteria which is mostly, based on what Maine housing espouses, so. Okay, so that's all I had. I don't know if anybody had any questions on it or any.
No, it sounds like they really won't be of much use to us.
Yeah, if it continues with the vein of the last meeting, I would agree with that, and we'll see if I can shift the focus a little. Not sure I can, but. And if there's anything anybody wants me to bring up at that next meeting, let me know. Which is third Wednesday, would be next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, where is it?
It's a Zoom.
Oh.
They're doing them, they're scheduled for 5:30 to 7 on the third Wednesdays of every month.
I run a housing group
On the
from
third.
6 to 7:30 on the
Okay.
third Wednesdays of the month. Otherwise, it may make sense to join,
Yeah,
bridging both of those. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry I'm late.
that's okay. Addie Filson, who runs the group, lives in, I think it's Searsmont. And so she's been able to, in the past, she's been able to kind of commandeer meeting room at the Searsmont town office. But has said that a lot of times it's in use, so she set everything up on Zoom. Because everybody's kind of small when you're dealing on laptops with that many people, but anyway. So anyway, if anybody has anything that they think I should articulate more than what I'm already trying to do, let me know. Okay,
I did meet with Alex from Island Institute about their housing
Mhm.
group. And to try and see about some of the innovations that Nissa had been sharing from
Mhm.
MDI and some of the other islands. And we talked a lot about transportation and the ferries, but
Mhm.
there didn't seem to be a lot to share on how, like, different approaches that municipalities have taken, sort of in collaboration with organizations like IAP, like I didn't learn a lot about housing and housing approaches from different islands. I just learned more about transportation things. And so I don't know if there's been any conversation about sort of the next Island Institute housing group. I'm on the Maryland list now.
okay.
But it hasn't been scheduled as far as I can tell.
Now, and Miss isn't here, but she does attend those. They, actually, Rick Rogers, when he was still with IAP, gave a presentation to one maybe 6 months ago, and at the same meeting, which I did attend that one, somebody from, Bar Harbor.
Mhm.
There's a program at Bar Harbor, pretty robust program, I think, and gave a present, and they kind of presented what their models were. I don't, everybody just kind of listened. I didn't hear a lot of back and forth questions, et cetera, from that. And then they went on to a lot of other Island Institute kinds of things, so.
Okay,
Miss had just attended a meeting,
the
she
climate
said-
change one this week? They
Yeah,
had a climate, they had a meeting about getting input for the next phase of Maine's Won't Wait climate change.
oh,
plan.
okay, so it was purely.
It was
climate
just
change,
about
okay.
climate,
All right.
although I'm sure housing came up, but it was giving the state feedback on the draft plan.
Okay. All right, if you would just let me know if anything on the housing, I mean, I'm happy to, because those are typically Zoom, are they not?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm happy to kind of listen in
yeah,
at the same time.
and I'll see if I can get a copy of that former Bar Harbor presentation.
Okay, yeah, my recollection again, when Rick did his, he had some documents that I think were part of the website that you guys have. And so I'm thinking that Bar Harbor did the same thing, so a lot of it should still be online, I believe,
Okay.
so. They had a fair amount of, I don't know that I wanna say there was town money involved, but they had a fairly large. Donation account that they used for buying houses. I don't know if anything was donated or whether it was land or
Mhm.
whatever, but a lot of it seemed to be that housing was donated. But they appeared to have a fair amount of money running around. Okay, the next thing that I had on the agenda was just us again talking about next steps. We kind of threw around a bunch of things, and I'm not sure that we settled on anything firm coming out of our last meeting, and so, as I looked through, there were a number of topics that we did bring up. So has anybody got anything that they think we should be pursuing?
I'm still interested in investigating, though I haven't done it yet. If there are any communities that give some sort of, tax break to what we're looking at, workforce housing, not low-income housing. If there were some sort of, tax incentive to a private contractor to build houses, for someone making between $75,000 and $125,000 a year or something. But I haven't done that, and I should, I think, go out there and start poking around. The other thing that I think, we need to somehow get a handle on is any available grant money that should, that thing I sent out today. A recent announcement that Biden Inspiration announced $100 million worth of investments in new housing in form of grants to state and local governments. Now, that's not a huge amount, and I suspect that whatever 2 or 3 million might come toward Maine would be focused more on big, low-income housing building projects.
Was that the money that they already announced? Or, because there is money coming to Lewiston through a recent Biden administration investment in housing, but I don't know.
I don't know the details.
But if it is, if it's the same money, then that money is dedicated to the Tree Streets project in Lewiston, if it's coming to Maine. If it's a new source of funding, that's different.
Okay.
But it was announced, I want to say a month or two ago, and so it might be different.
It may be different. I don't know. Now, that same article I sent out to y'all also say that there was a $78 billion tax deal that would support housing tax credits, but that was defeated because of Senate Republicans. So that's not going anywhere now, but it might in the future.
I'm just trying to open. So this, okay, so this was Heather Cox Richardson's, and which was dated today, or it was yesterday, under her byline of today.
And
Does not say if it's the earlier one.
And if there is federal money now or in the future for grants that would be applicable to our problem, how do we find out about that and how do we pursue it? I don't know.
Okay, so that is something that MCOG can help.
They would do that.
Well, I'm not sure they would do it as much
They would
as they
help
would
us.
know about it, and they could direct us into doing a couple of different things. So I can ask,
Good.
when I talk to Addie next week,
I would imagine Island Institute can help with that. Wouldn't expect that to be one of the roles of their group as
Okay.
well,
could you,
but I can also help with that. So at
Yeah.
least when I find out about it, I'm happy to share,
Yeah, that would come
especially
to
when it
your
comes.
attention somewhere in your work, wouldn't it?
Yeah, usually it does. And I'm really curious about money, not just for housing, but for things like water and sewer infrastructure.
Mhm.
Because I don't know. I know that at IAP, the discussions about how much housing we can build on the existing land that's been donated is really limited by septic, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know. I mean, my fantasy is if we could get federal grants to put in some kind of water treatment system at the 3 town centers. I think there's one in the
There's one in
center,
Dark Harbor now.
Yep.
right? But if we could put in 2 more water treatment centers in the other 2 town
Yeah.
centers, that would facilitate
Mhm.
much more housing, but I don't know of anything like that.
yeah. It would be, and again, we can ask Miss, I'm not sure where the town would stand on that, because I do know, and this is just word on the street kind of a thing, that the existing water treatment facility is a kind of a sore subject in some quadrants of the population.
Mhm.
And whether they would feel, and that, by the way, I believe is in need of an upgrade, if I am not mistaken. If you heard anything on the planning board, would probably be discussing that.
The select board has discussed it.
Oh, the
So,
select board,
yeah,
okay.
they, it does need some upgrading, but I'm
But it's been around. for quite some
not up
time.
to date on the
Okay.
details with that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, what I've heard is really unofficial and it's more
Mhm.
word on the street, so. It would be interesting to see what they have to say on that, but doing infrastructure kinds of things, so. Has anybody dealt with Jen Hayden? No, okay, so Jen did some work for the select board, and part of that, I think, was trying to see. Where there might be, cross committee needs for grant writing, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not sure about research. But I can always contact her again,
Yeah, I wrote something for her,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah, I talked to her when she was pulling everything together. She was kind of out talking to everybody, but that's a year ago. Because Jen unfortunately has one of those 10-month leases. And she had to call me from Boston because she was in the 2 months that her lease didn't cover. So I know it was a year ago. I could talk to her again.
You know, there are some, looking it up right now, there are some aspects of the density in town centers that uses a public water treatment system as a kickstart.
Mhm.
You can only do so much without that,
Right.
and you can do more with that for density.
Yeah, so. I mean, what do you, over here, you've got 7 acres, is it, the new land?
6, I believe.
6, which doesn't mean it's in the town center, it doesn't mean 8 houses or whatever, because you've got to do perk testing and all that.
Mhm.
Probably a lot less than that without having some kind of,
I believe the next project is 8 bedrooms
total.
total.
Okay, I'm sure on 6 acres, you could probably do that.
But in terms of zoning would allow many
Oh,
more
many more,
units.
yeah.
20,000
square feet, so that's would give you 12, theoretically, 12 lots.
Yeah, exactly. So each with, of course, multiple bedrooms.
Right, so 24 minimum and probably more than that, so
Right, so
that's a big difference between what you're planning.
that or other innovations in water and septic and things. I have no idea. It's a world I know nothing about, and I assume it's very complicated,
So,
both in terms of the infrastructure side of things and the actual treatment side of things.
there are a lot of new methods of treating.
Yeah, there's some inexpensive pre-treatment
Yeah.
facilities now that are not expensive.
So I just, as a side, I watched a show about building a house where the water treatment plant was a very large metal, I don't know what to call it, but box in the basement of the house. And they didn't talk about the cost, but at the end of the day, the engineer who was in charge of the project said, when it's finished, I can pour you a glass of water that's potable. And now, that's exactly what everybody who was on camera did. But it just shows you that things have come a long way. There are,
Yeah.
I mean, he said, nobody plans to drink this water, but you could.
Yeah.
So it does say that there are new, all right, and different methods of treating
Mhm.
waste, so.
Yeah,
Here's what it says in the town center ordinance is that all new construction in a town center shall be connected to a public sewer and water system if available. If a public sewer system is not available, town construction, a multiple family dwelling must be served by a common subsurface water disposal system. The difficulty in town centers and small lots is the separation distance between subsurface waste disposal and any well, which in the town centers must be a minimum of 200 feet. And that's on a 20,000 square foot lot, that's difficult to do.
Mhm.
Unless a pre-treatment system approved by the Maine Department of Health and Human Services and local plumbing inspector is installed. And then there can be a minimum separation between the wastewater system and wellhead of only 100 feet. So those are the only pieces that come into play about wastewater.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Does gray water need to go through a septic? So say from a dishwasher, a washing machine, a shower?
I don't know.
I don't know, but
I
it
don't-
typically
I
does.
don't think so. It certainly must be, has less stringent requirements for sure. Though, of course, most conventional houses don't separate those two.
Right, but I mean, what about the option of composting toilets? Of which I know almost nothing. But is that a possibility for housing where it's just simply not possible to have water treatment?
Certainly, that's an option.
I mean, that would go along with some kind of way of gray water dispersal without requiring a whole septic system. So I don't know if that's viable or what the cost would be, but that might be one way to go.
Mhm.
Those are all possible solutions to population density, yes.
That one, I think, I would, um. I would think we could get, from the planning board, we'd probably get an answer to that.
Do we have, does the planning board also track sort of wells and access to the aquifer? Like, do we have restrictions density wise in terms of enough water?
There's a water quality committee that does do that. I don't know how extensively or how often, but I know they have not encountered any problems in some time of any significance. The two issues are, one, wells running dry from overuse, or two, being contaminated somehow. But I don't know of anything like that that's happened in recent history. Do you know of anything?
I don't.
Again, I think Dave probably can answer that.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to Dave,
Thinking
'cause
about,
I do know that they look at that, so.
I'm thinking about sort of, if the housing committee or the town is collaborating with a developer like IAP, that our role might be to do some initial research on alternative water systems and, or I'm asking actually, I'm imagining it could be that our lane is to do some research into options and what would be needed in terms of permitting, like to smooth the pathway for something that's not your traditional septic system through the planning board. I don't know if, and then presenting those options to anyone who's thinking about doing development on island. I don't know, maybe.
Well, I'm with you. We should certainly offer our services to help, to facilitate, to smooth the way. And we might be the intermediary for information and planning before they went to the planning board. Yes, we should offer that. Now, that's you and me, and we're putting ourselves out there
Yeah.
for some
Mhm.
work someplace in the future, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and given the fact that we're not sitting on a bundle of cash, those are the kinds of things that I think we can do.
Mhm.
And, You know, because it's, our goal again is to push for that level of housing that, you know, gets us a workforce. And whether that benefits IAP or just housing for the target, you know, the workforce target that we're looking at, it, I mean, to me is almost immaterial, but, you know, so yeah, I think that's something well worth looking at. All right,
The question, and I don't have knowledge of this, so it may be a ridiculous question,
No,
but ha- does the town ever buy derelict properties that already have a house that's fallen apart? Because there are a few. There's three, even there's one that, the house that's directly across from me, Tommy, that one that's been empty forever, and then someone bought it, start to fix it, and nothing now has happened for 2 years again. And the fellow, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, who is down the road a bit, who has also a derelict house, who recently died. And so I'm wondering about these properties that now are empty, and there's another one up island that has the different trailers and the house is literally falling down. You know, what kind of possibility to purchase properties that would otherwise be undesirable as a way to somehow facilitate whatever the arrangements might be, but to have affordable housing, because there presumably there are existing septic systems on those properties that may be viable as a way to, and maybe could even have, if the lots are big enough, a way to have more than one unit. So I just wondered whether the town does that, or if taxes haven't paid for a very long time, whether the town can take over property that might be more, might possibly work for the workforce housing.
I do know based on a conversation that I had within the last 2 weeks that the town has not done a tax takeover of a house in decades. Because I had a conversation with somebody about the house that's up island, which turned out that even though the house is derelict and it's falling apart more and more every day, the taxes have been paid.
yeah,
Which is found interesting, but
Yeah,
but the person I talked to said that no, there had not been a foreclosure.
Yeah.
In decades.
and as far as derelict houses goes, there's a strong sentiment in Maine that if I own the property, I can do whatever I damn well please on it, and I think
Right.
as far as law goes, the town would have no case whatsoever unless there was some sort of public danger involved. And that would be hard to
Yeah,
prove, so I don't think that they would ever take anything, and I would have thought that the town would have taken something for back taxes, but
that,
it hasn't happened in decades.
no,
In general, the town doesn't really want to own any other property. The town went through a phase, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago, where they actually sold off little bits and pieces of things they owned here and there. So unless there was a real new focus about housing, the town's not interested.
There is an entity that at the state level that was created a couple of years ago as a land bank to help municipalities with this question around derelict buildings, but also brownfields and other places that need significant remediation. And the intention is to provide a mechanism, both financial and logistical, to do takeovers through eminent domain or tax liens, and then to turn those lands to public use, whether it's turning them into affordable housing or other sort of community entity, you know, for schools or playgrounds or those kinds of things. And they have only just gotten started in the last year.
so they provide, so I'm gonna use the one that Susan brought up, which is the up island one, because I don't know what you're talking about down by you.
Yeah.
That has to be I mean, it's got a border on almost a Superfund site. I mean, it's got 4, maybe 5 derelict RVs. The house itself, which you can see almost weekly. And so, the cleanup of that has got the, and which to me would be a disincentive to the town taking it over.
Yeah.
The amount of money it would cost to clean it up. So if there is something,
Yeah, and we're not alone in that, where you've got folks where it may actually pose a health risk
Mhm.
for neighbors or others, where there is either a health reason to do so, or it's, in terms of, the community members surrounding it, and their property values, there's a number of different reasons, I think, that you can use, but
so the
I'll see
question,
if I can find out more about
Alright.
the land bank, because
Well,
it's,
that would be interesting, and even to query Janet or a select board member.
yeah,
If there are pieces of property that are in arrears on their taxes, could we look toward the town taking those over for the specific purpose of providing year-round housing?
Mhm. And then if we
Yeah.
did, and if there was public funding to do the remediation. What, I mean, I'm not even sure, like, so if the water and sewer or water and septic exist. And I'm curious to know if the receiving the land as a donation would bring down the cost of development enough for IAP or others to do something. I don't know.
well, yeah, I mean, because land. Here is a significant element, cost element in
Yeah.
building a house.
Yeah.
I mean, cost of an acre and a half of land, there's one over on Golf Course Road, it's just shy of 2 acres, it's going for $795,000. Still for sale, by the way,
Yes.
nobody's jumping at it,
Mhm.
but, if you look through the listings, you're looking at 200,000 plus for, anything that's 1 to 2+ acres.
Yeah.
So that's a huge cost. of
Yes, so that
somebody.
might be a
Yeah.
third of the total cost of any of the building.
You're right. I mean, look at what IAP is able to save as a result of having the
Mhm.
land. So if you can get the land, that is definitely one giant step forward.
I found the state statute that authorizes it. I'm looking for any news coverage or anything else about it. But I'll send this to
Okay,
folks.
and then we can chat about it. So let me just go through what I think we've talked about, right? So we're gonna look at, Tom, you said you would do some work on, what kind of tax incentive could you give somebody who was willing to develop for workforce?
And that probably requires some sort of easement written into the deed, but I'll do some research.
And then I have, 3 items that we talked about that all talked about grants. What is MCOG, what can they direct us to relative to grants? Because they've done that for other people, so. And then I'll talk to Jen Hayden. Is there any way that we can use some existing work if people are going out looking for grants? And if so, what would we use a grant for, kind of a thing? I'll also talk to Dave Dyer as the first step anyway, talking about composting as a potential option versus septic. And at the same time, the whole, what kind of rules, for lack of a better word, is there on wells? For not only individual housing, but how do you look at it from an overall? Now, I do know that when we were doing the town hall, the town center, excuse me, when that came up for a vote, you remember Mert talked about, because they had the planning board had included in that whole package. Something about wells and what you needed to do, and, you know, Merck went on and said, we've done all these studies. That effectively show there's no problem with the wells and. You know, I mean, and that's kind of what I heard, and I just said, okay, and filed it away, so maybe Dave can give me some more information tonight. But it would be nice if there's no issue. And again, what are the rules surrounding this? So I think that's probably enough to,
Yeah, if we can do a little action on those fronts, that would be something.
okay.
Yeah. And I was,
Sorry,
I was supposed to look into tax increment financing, and I did not.
Okay,
So I'm sorry.
so I'll put that on this list.
I'll put that on.
Susan, were you gonna say something?
out of curiosity, and perhaps it could be useful, I will look into advances in the technology of composting toilets. Since I first experienced them quite a while ago. And also, the whole question about gray water. You know, and in the state of Maine, what these rules would be. So just in case.
Okay, great,
Awesome.
thank you.
All
All right,
Susan, your background looks like it's a Zoom background.
it's real.
It's actually
Yeah.
real.
I know it's real, but it looks like it's something people put up.
And behind those birch and trees and fir trees is the water. That's just right out there on that point.
Wow,
The old family cabin that Sue Hatch's father built 60 years ago. Still standing.
Yes.
oh, well, it's gorgeous, anyway, so.
And an outhouse, which I know we can't have anymore for new. It was
And
grandfathered
you have
in.
a composting toilet of the most efficient and crude design.
It's true. It's true.
Call them outhouse. yeah.
No.
Classic, that's a classic composting. toilet.
That's right.
Classic, yeah.
Yeah.
My grandfather had a cottage in East Boothbay, and that outhouse was just a hole over the beach.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure he was not alone at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect it's not there anymore.
No, it is not. My aunt lives there now, and there is no longer.
Yeah. That was one of the kinds called a long drop instead of a short drop. I've seen those.
Okay, let's see, okay, that next thing was comments from visitors, since our visitor is gone. Does anybody have anything else that they?
I can just share that. I'm doing some research on sort of the income ranges that different employers on islands are paying. This is just an informal survey to help with some of the things that IAP is doing in terms of strategy development, in terms of what, beyond this next project, who and what should we be targeting? And so I'm happy to share the results of that if it's helpful later.
Yeah, out of curiosity, since state money is obviously limited, as you move forward, what are you looking for in terms of money raising, is for lack of a better term?
I mean, I have not done my research into some of the scattered site community land trust models that exist yet. However, IAP is very aware that state dollars are very limited and is looking at what are our options outside of that, including private fundraising. But there haven't been any conclusions drawn about sort of what to do next. The rural affordable rental housing program that the state created, I think is going to be the primary vehicle that they're going to use if funds are available. And that has a minimum of 5 units in a project. And so the density conversation feels very relevant to accessing those state funds. when they become available
Okay.
in different rounds.
And will those state funds come with the income?
They will, so 80% AMI for rentals and 120% typically.
So
And so our area median income for Waldo County, I'm not sure.
last time it was about a little over 60, not quite 61.
Yeah, and so and it depends on your household size, right? And so, I mean, I could pull it up, actually. But
I had one individual that I've been in informal conversations with for more than a year, who's interested in being part of the solution, who owns property, but doesn't really want to get involved with jumping through state
Mm,
hoops.
Mhm.
But that sort of, what you're just talking about, Kate, 5 units, if there were some guidelines about that you could send to me, that would be something I could show to this guy and say, you know, this is a reasonable program. Maybe you would look toward building something along these lines.
Mhm.
Yeah, because as you know, I mean, as you look, and I'm thinking more from an IAP point of view, as you look towards the future where you're going beyond these every so often, main housing,
Mhm.
I don't know, they call grants or funding of some sort. But you look towards doing something that's bigger, it becomes a point in time, well, maybe that IAP becomes almost, I don't want to sound too bureaucratic about it, but the housing authority kind of
Mhm.
for the island. Because if you think about it, if it's a 5 house minimum kind of a thing. Now you're talking about more building on a community level than has been going on for quite some time. And so to be chasing multiple kinds of those things, to me, says that it almost fights with each other and you don't want to do that.
Right? So for Waldo County, says that 80% AMI for a household of 4 is 65,920, so that's the income limit.
So that's up a little bit.
It is,
A
but
household.
that's a household limit.
Mhm.
And so that does mean that 80% AMI for 2 income households on island is likely to be too low of a limit.
Mhm.
So that would mean targeting home ownership programs
Mhm. At
My-
the 100.
at the 120% would make more sense.
Mhm. Because what you were speaking of earlier, trying to analyze wages on Islesboro and how that affects housing. I mean, the old rule of thumb of you should spend 25% of your income on housing is still a very comfortable level, and most people can't do that anymore.
Right.
So that's the arithmetic we're looking for is there a way to do something like that, to make that possible for our citizenry to be able to do that?
Yeah, because
But if you take off on that, so. Using 65, that says that you're looking at a 78,000.
right, and it
Um,
says the 120% for a family of 4 is 98.8.
Oh, okay, and so
So-
when you talk about that and you then say, well, if there's a way we can. Either do it via tax break or donated land,
Mhm.
then. You're into an income level that should theoretically be able to afford it.
Yeah.
Afford what you're gonna put.
Yeah,
down.
exactly, and then you get into questions about like, so. It seems like. And then we get into questions of what models of homeownership assistance make the most sense, right? Is that, because overall, the price of I mean, there seem to be. A number of homes for sale on the island right now that are out of reach for folks because of down payment
Mhm.
size you'd need in order to, and interest rates, right? Interest rates are really high. Or relatively high to what they've been for the last couple of decades, and you've got high down payments that would be needed to bring the the monthly payment to a reasonable amount. And then, and so the traditional down payment assistance programs of $20,000 or $10,000 don't seem like they make a dent particularly.
Mm.
But if you put folks into, if you invest in a land trust model, then people often seem like they get stuck, that they can't move from land trust or limited equity to market rate. And then do people feel like they're, so then, I don't know if co-ops, there's so many questions about sort of what model makes the most sense to make a public investment in. Like if we're gonna invest town resources, we want that to be a long-term investment, not something that somebody can just flip.
Right.
But at the same time, we wanna make sure that people feel like it's a model that works for them.
Yeah, it's got to be attractive to the,
So-
the homeowner,
Yeah.
prospective homeowner.
Right, so I would think that you'd wanna do something that's probably a hybrid of. Enticing the investment and at the same time requiring. A longer term investment, I know that. IAP has had some issues where. There are people in the house now that wouldn't qualify if they were going for it today.
But there's nothing else that they could do on the
Right.
market either, yeah.
And yet, how do I disengage from what I have is not really very attractive, and so. If again, you're thinking long-term, you say, okay, there's gotta be a hybrid that says. I need to have somebody in here for, let's just pick 8 to 10 years. That shows they're part of the
Mhm.
community and they're investing, themselves and their family in the community. But, provides them with a path at some point in time, that they could capitalize. On that investment over that, whatever it is, 8 or 10 years. Whereas today it's kind of hard to do with the model, that's there, so.
Yeah. I wonder if a limited equity co-op model
I
might,
don't know very much about this.
yeah, it's something where you have. Some of the equity is held by the co-op itself, but some of the equity is held by the individual homeowners.
So,
And so-
and the co-op is,
A legal structure that's like an HOA, but so it would manage anything that's joint.
okay, so
No,
the
so that's-
co-op would be the entire group within the housing community
Mhm,
versus the town,
yeah.
okay.
But I don't know if that would work in terms of, I don't know if that would create the same. The same dynamic that the land trust does, where people feel like, well, I can't, even the equity that I don't know, I have to research more,
Okay.
I don't know whether.
Okay, well,
All right.
you're on it. Okay, next meeting.
Mhm.
Um, we have run pretty much on every other month. Is that viable to continue, or do we need to?
No, that sounds good. So October would be looking at.
Yeah.
October, do you want to do Tuesday or a Thursday or another day? We have Tuesday, October 22nd,
Okay,
Thursday, the 18th. Oh, no, that's a Friday, sorry.
yeah,
Thursday, the 24th.
Either of those is fine with
yeah,
me.
same here.
I'd say not closer to the election. I'd say farther out from the election if possible. So earlier in the month of October.
Thursday, the 10th.
Yeah,
For me.
I'm okay,
For which day?
10th of
Yeah.
October.
I'm okay.
Susan,
Yes, that's good.
And six.
Okay.
Okay, so the 10th it is. All right,
Right.
all right. If there are no other items, do I hear a move?
I move that we adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
Susan,
Yes.
I say adjourn.
roll call.
Tom?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, yes, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Now, Susan, what you need to do is turn that chair around so you can look out that beautiful window.
Well, I can to
Oh,
my
it's
right,
over
I
there
can.
too.
Or you can
It's
just
right
take
on
your
the
laptop
skinny
right
little
now.
point that's eroding is where the old cabin is. So,
You want to take your laptop out on the deck and show them the view from there?
well, if you want, but I have to tell you, you have to haul in your own drinking water. So it's not, it's not luxurious in that respect. And
Susan,
of
where
course,
do you
haul
live?
everything. Huh?
Well, that's,
This is on Spruce Island. This is,
Oh.
if you're standing at the ferry dock, you're looking at Warren Island. Off to your left is Spruce Island.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
can you see the ferry?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
very nice.
Amazing.
And then lobster guys in the back.
Yeah,
Yeah, the water's right down there. Yes, sir.
well,
Gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a lucky thing. And there's the sun starting to go down. You can see.
But you
Anyway,
do have to haul propane tanks and water and it ain't easy.
now everything comes in, everything goes out. So it's a lot of physical work that's getting a little tiring now. A little cabin, maybe 400 square feet.
that's all you need.
Well, thank you again, and I'm so sorry again that I was late,
No problem.
but this was lovely.
All right.
All right.
I got my marching orders.